Hello and welcome to day 78 of 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tomlin's Nyback, and we are talking about black issues in America, how black life evolves, emerges, transpires under marginalization and various forms of oppression, as well as looking at white life and privilege and status expectation of favor. As this project goes on through this year, I've stumbled upon two ideas that interest me a whole lot. The first idea has two parts. I really kind of touched on them just a little bit just a second ago. Is The first part is, does the black mind, the slave mind, still exists today? Is it being passed down from generation to generation, intuitively, genetically, uh, some type of mental way? It's being proliferated. Second, uh, in the same vein, does the white mind, privilege, expectation of favor, entitlement get passed down? Is it being passed down from generation to generation? And the second idea, those are the two parts of the first idea. The second idea is, uh, are blacks understanding and playing the financial game properly here in America? Do we understand? Do we have a financial literacy? Do we talk and think in proper financial terms as far as how money works in America? Um, Banking, uh, what happens to our dollars and our money when we put it into the bank? Um, do we understand the Federal Reserve? Do we understand how debt um, can be an asset or liability? Things like that. It's education I never got, uh, so I'm just now starting to get my feet wet in the financial realm, in the financial world. So those are two big things that are coming out through this year long adventure here. I am inspired by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. I was introduced to his videos and his work through a mutual friend of ours. I've never met the man, but what he says has had such an impact that I've just been driven to speak out in my own way because being a black man in America, I feel the pressure, the feeling forced, feeling like so many hooks, so many forces having a piece of my life and my life not being my own in a sense, stemming from slavery days. And so we've got a whole year to talk about how I come to these conclusions. But I read three of his works. First work was a Black History Reader, 101 questions you never thought to ask. Occasionally we come out there. You can expect that I guess a third of the year is going to be out of that book, 101 questions. Second book I read was Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice. And finally, Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. Powernomics. I was about to say you can also find him and more resource materials at powernomics.com. Very appropriate. I've done this introduction now 78 times, so things are starting to mesh and mold together, I guess. Also, we take a fictional look at slave life and see how that may still be transpiring in America. We look at Harriet Beecher Stowe's phenomenal work, Uncle Tom's Cabin from the mid 1800s. It's a work that has has influenced entertainment and the theater. We get blackface from her book. A lot of uh, important attitudes, stereotypes between white and black folks in America from Uncle Tom's Cabin. You see behind me the hashtag us too, hashtag USTOO. There's black women coming together, forming. They have their little uh, group there, kind of an answer to the hashtag Me Too movement. Also, another place you can go is Blag Enough, BLAGGENUF, and it's like a black Facebook. And there are plenty other places. This is the information age. That's an important thing to note and remember as we talk about even financial discourse. And part of this is mostly the conversation bears back to economic impact. How blacks are not participating, whether willingly, unconsciously, or not participating intentionally because of the devices of powers within um, American society. You place things like economic growth on a graph, you'll see many groups uh, kind of like an investment ticker. It goes up, but everybody's got this steadily increasing line of wealth, whereas black folks at the bottom of groups has just a nice little flat line. We hit blacks hit a ceiling, and we seem not to be able to penetrate. So that is what um, that impacts of the economic impact of this whole discussion is just very relevant. Now, so if you made it past yesterday, we're going to visit some of those icky moments of black history, black medical experimentation, pain, uh, diseases, taking um, black corpses, body parts, cells, and the profiteering of white folks off of that. It just continues and continues. One of my fears is that we live in a state, I'm going to call this term benign slavery, a harmless attitude towards slavery. I want to say that because we still, and I know a lot of groups are touched by this, but black black folks have yet to not be touched by it. You'll find groups going in and out of poverty, seemingly moving financially and economically up and down the wealth of America. But you find blacks frozen and stuck, always on the bottom as a group in terms of the financial wealth. So the benign slavery is like we can get, there's laws on the books that you can't prevent us from sitting at the same lunch counter or public transportation and things like that. You have to give us access if we can afford it. you know, there's some barriers there and marginalization there practiced. Um, blacks come and go as they please. We live in an illusion, I feel, of freedom. Uh, it's very profound, and it seems like as long as we can spend our money how we want, come and go as we please, we think we're free. but we're really not. Um, we're compelled to spend our money in certain ways. We're compelled to pay other rents of landlord. I can tell you right now, if you don't own your land, you are a slave. Your energy and your money goes to somebody somewhere is sitting back, so glad you're paying their mortgage or some other aspect of bill. You know, they've configured their ownership in a way as such as you're paying for all of that. You know, there's no, you're not helping out a landowner by um, living in their living in their space. It's not a shared contract. You know, the burden, no, the only burden the landlord has is keeping up the paperwork on that space. You know, but the money that goes to that space, and I'm doing it now too. The money I'm putting in is slowly accumulating for somebody's total ownership of land. Keep that in mind. If that is happening, that's the textbook definition of slavery. Um, Someone's getting a whole lot of labor and effort and sweat for minimum for their minimum labor and sweat. You go out and forage and bring back those resources, give them up. You get a little percentage to keep you going into next week, and a big chunk of that goes to accumulating for somebody else. If that's especially if you do not own your own land or own your own home. It's a benign attitude towards slavery. Um, you can the only difference is the coming and going. You know, we can choose not to participate, but if we don't participate, we better have some other means of sustaining ourselves and sheltering ourselves against the elements. Okay. Today in day 78, we're looking at racism coming out of Powernomics, and the heading is "A Racism, a Race Without a Finish Line." And just to give you just a very short, brief history, is the racism and the races stems from those mid 1400s, early to mid 1400s, where the boom of finding all this free black labor out of Africa and the the free land in the Americas, um, North America, all the way down to the tip of South America and the Caribbean islands and all that stuff. When all of this land and labor was found, a race started, mainly among the European nations, and it was an opportunity to get wealth and resources for less than pennies on the dollar. You compelled the labor, treated it any way you wanted. You ran off the natives off the land, free land full of oil, gold, silver, copper. You know, there was farming, agriculture, all this stuff, timber, um, fresh water. You know, just virgin, pristine land just opened up. So a race started with Portugal, Spain, uh, England, France. You know, some of those big. You think of the mighty nations. that were always warring with each other. They had essentially exhausted each other with their wars and their diseases and all that stuff. And this discovery was a boom for everybody. Um, Wars still occurred, but um, that was more towards securing the resources and land in the Americas at that point. So there's your racism in a nutshell. And so the racism, it's those power groups in a race scrambling for the wealth and resources of the Americas. So it's a power based competitive relationship also between blacks and non-blacks. But we want to note that blacks aren't racist, cannot be racist because um, the racists are the ones employing marginalization, favoring business among their own groups. Uh, the power group or groups making policies that marginalize business policies that marginalize black growth, hinder black growth. This is especially profound when you think of Jim Crow semi-slavery. As slavery was ending, then the backlash was codes and laws, devices to incarcerate black folks, to keep them in servitude um, for just the most minor infractions would bring years of chain gang jail terms. That you picture the movies where you see the masses of blacks and black and white striped uniforms moving up and down the road in the South, swinging implements on the road. That's the picture, for their that was their punishment for their minor infractions. So um, that's what the power groups, power races employed. Blacks would only respond to racism. That is our that's as much as racism and racist as a black person can be, as a black person can execute in America. We don't have the power to be racist. If my illustration has made any sense to you, you know, we can respond. We can have ill favor towards powers and groups in America. And basically, you think about it, it's just about every group above us, Hispanics, Asians who are close to being classified as whites, whites themselves, European whites, will always just be that dominant class. And they're going to continue making adjustments as they um, as the lower races make adjustments and begin climbing up. Too many uh, people of those groups begin spilling up the ladder, breaking through the ceiling. Suddenly you've got new laws, new sanctions, and new compensation to hinder that growth. And um, white folks know how to manipulate the system to get patents, to get um, rights on intellectual property quickly and stuff. Um, Black folks need to get better at doing that. It's like in Uncle Tom's Cabin, there's a portion where a slave named George has made an invention to better the production in some kind of industry in which he's a part, and his master comes, and his master is all uppity because the slave is receiving so much accolades, recognition, accommodations, and things like that. Uh, but the master, um, he's a fool for not doing this, but the master has the right to glean uh, rights to his slave's invention, that intellectual property, and receive funds from that. Oh, or did he? I think he did take the money uh, that came from the increased business as a result of his slaves work. The slave got nothing. The slave got a hard way to go, actually, which included a branding on the back of one of his hands. So that's the kind of thing that's the racism. Racism is this downward force from uh, cultural powers in America. There is no finish line. There's no end. Um, well, there could be an end if blacks organized and whites just stepped out of the way. Um, but that's a big discussion. But I think Dr. Anderson puts it in the framework of no finish line because whites are going to whites and other groups, now that they've stepped on and trampled on black folks, they're going to keep that, um, stay one up on blacks as a group. And now, if you remember my discussion at the beginning, talking about if you don't own land, own your home, you're still practicing a kind of slavery. Um, that I'm finding out as I begin and attain my financial literacy. Real estate is one of those um, slavery devices. It's just very legal. It's nice and neat, clean, and it looks like they've got their space. But it wouldn't be any different. It's not any different from having a shack with a dirt floor, with hay for a bed, and slave owners living in some comfortable house. You're just a farming implement on the land. And you go out and you work and you offer up those gleanings to that white power, that slave master. If you don't own your space, then that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing right now. I've got a nice space and freedom and walk around naked, come and go. Right? But if I don't um, bring back the fruits, the majority of my labor to the powers of this establishment, then my chastisement, the whipping, is to be tossed out into the elements, to be exposed. I may not get a physical lashing on my back with a bullwhip, but I'll get a lashing um, in having some of my freedoms taken away, at a decrease in options, if you understand what I'm saying. So true racism exists only when one group holds a disproportionate share of wealth and power over another group, then uses those resources to marginalize, exploit, exclude, subordinate the weaker group. Um, for blacks, it's tough for me because I'm not as cutthroat. If I was more cutthroat, I'd probably be in a different space today. But reading some books now about assets, um, purchasing assets, and what the writer's talking about is he's he's talking about investments and such, but he's actually a real estate tycoon in a lot of ways. And you know, once real, I'm learning. Once real estate people have secured that space, oh, they don't, they're, oh, they give back a little. They do some benevolent acts. I won't. It's not a. They're not 100% sadist, but um, the bulk of their energy is keeping that marginalization in check through rents and things like that. Picture maybe in the old days. I like my mother. I remember her cooking a lobster when I was a child. I remember her using all her strength to keep the lid on that pot because the lobster was still alive, being boiled alive, and it was, ashing and doing all it could to um, get out of that hot water, you know. And so these real estate folks, they're doing the same thing with their rents and policies to uh, make it very difficult to come out from under their yoke of ownership and control of property. Um, so the whites' power in their racism, they can deny employment, education opportunities, business resources, and all the like, all kinds of all types of discrimination. As I grow older, I'm finding the younger folks are very quick to discriminate, and you can't prove it unless they explicitly come out and say something or demonstrate something out in the open. But I know I've been denied employment. I know I've been released from employment because I'm supposed to be a non-threatening, ignorant black man, not express myself and such. Uh, it's very sad. They well, things what comes around goes around. Maybe in my youth, in my 20s, I may have been a little short with older folks myself. So I'll give them that. But the marginalization does occur. What I'm saying is not just race or something like that. It can be age, body type. You know, us humans are so stupid like that. Humans are the only creature in the universe that do that. You know, find some reason to form a clique and exclude someone who's different, someone who might be struggling, someone who might look better. I've seen good-looking people marginalized by a group. Uh, so it's really strange with humans. Uh, so always know that blacks, we can only really react to racism. We don't exercise racism. So, I just want to have just a free flowing, yesterday, I'm still thinking about uh, yesterday's piece about medical experimentation. We've got to revisit that over and over again. And I want blacks to start thinking and evaluating their motivation, our motivation. How bad do we want it? I think reflecting on the past and these past abuses, you know, because the slavery, it was like, as long as it's some kind of, it was just an inconvenience, and afterwards we came out on bottom, then that's going to be the reaction to us as we talk about these things as a group. Whites are You're going to be incredulous. Why are blacks so uptight? It was just, a little bit of slavery and little whips and chains, so a little, the minimizing speech about slavery. No, it was rape. It was experimentation. It was forced labor. It was working a person to death. If we can get some of that urgency into the language, dialogue, discourse, exchange, those are historical facts, people. Then I think that bringing it into the present would bring more urgency, put it in a more proper place. We can invoke these things and get a little further, us as a group. No other American group approaches that. Native Americans were just killed off and moved. They were not, as a group, forced into institutionalized slavery like black folks over hundreds of years. No other group in America can make that claim. That can be our power. I'm running a little over and I'm starting to get heated up. I could easily turn this into an hour session, I can see. But that's just a short piece. Hey, day 78 out of the way. Come check us out tomorrow. Welcome to the new subscribers. I'm sorry if I haven't been keeping up. I gotta admit, I'm not a big social media guy, but I do see the ticker is going up little by little. That's okay. We want grassroots growth here. I'm not out for some campaign and whatnot. But thanks for joining us, new subscribers. I'm Tomlin's Nye back. That's 365 days towards racial change. Come see us again now.